It's very important to be agile with our communications. We need to have a unified and a multi-channel approach. We can't just stick to one and forget about others. And in this new age, intranet and internal communication tools that we have these days, like Sociable, Teams, and all others, they are very helpful. And these tools not only keep the audience engaged with two-way communication, but also provide metrics to the managers, to figure out what is working well and what's not.
Hello and welcome to Master of Comms, the podcast for transformative communication techniques straight from the pros. Today we're going to be discussing how one can communicate with employees during a merger. I'm Krusha Sejwani, co-host of Master of Comms and Director Asia at Sociable. And I'm accompanied by our guest for the day, Preeti Sharma, former Regional Communication Manager at DSM Firmenich. Preeti, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kusha, for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And before we go into the hot topic for the day, I would love if you can just tell us and our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm very excited, first of all, to be on this conversation in this podcast around merger communications and talk about my experiences. I have more than 20 years of experience as a communications professional. I began my career as a journalist and I've worked with leading media houses in India, such as NDTV, Hindustan Times, the Times Group. I transitioned to a career in communications about 5 years ago, but I won't call it a change of course because media professionals are inherent communicators. So since then, I've worked with EXL and DSM Firmenich, managing internal and external communication.
Wow, 20 years is a very long time. That's a lot of experience in communication. And I'm sure there's a lot we could learn from you. But for today, we're going to focus on your most recent project last year in 23, which was the merger. So can you maybe first tell our audience what is a merger? Let's start very basic.
So merger, we often joked, is like marriage. It's like when two companies decide to come together and operate as one, and they see their strength in this and their future in this. So this is merger is all about. So in merger communications, there are two scenarios that we need to strategize for. One before the merger, and second during the post merger integrations. As a communicator, when we begin our job, we need to focus on our objectives. So, what is it that we want to achieve? Now, here, transparency is very important. The leaders should not shy away from explaining the rationale behind the merger to the people. And once the communication and the leadership team are on the same page about messaging, we should now think about the tactics of implementing this vision. So we need to set up a communication calendar with dates for the CEO's message, the town hall, and the big day of the merger. It would be good if you think about the merger day as a countdown, clock ticking, and you work towards it. Now we can create a SharePoint page with all the juicy details about the merger and place it where everyone can easily find it on the intranet. For successful post-merger integration, I really feel that open and transparent communication is very important. So the leadership team should communicate to employees the new vision for the merged company, the high points, the expectations that they can have from the integration, and help them identify with the new organization, the new brand.
Wow. Firstly, I think you've drawn it so well that there's a lot of sub communication. You've shared a lot of examples I'd love to go deeper into, but maybe I'm just going to take a step back and say, can you help maybe communicators understand that what is even the major goal for employee communication during a merger? Like, what does one aspire to achieve?
Yeah, when we are dealing with communicating about a merger, it's important to ensure that everyone in the organization feels like they're part of one team so that everybody pulls in the same direction. That also means for communication team that we need to keep everyone informed about what's happening, how we are moving towards the big day, and what each person can do to help. So this is a very sensitive time and we must be clear and consistent in our communications. There should be a regular cadence to the communication and the employees should know whom they can contact in case they have doubts and questions. In this way, by thoroughly planning our merger communication, we can help reduce the uncertainty in the air and anxiety among the employees and make them entirely on board with the merger.
Interesting. So there are, I think, a few sub questions that come to me. One is you said the CEO, the leadership, everyone needs to be on the same page, right? Where does that direction come from? Is it always from your CEO, or how does that work? Does comms play a role there?
Yeah, the larger vision comes from the board of directors, the leadership that is governing the company. And when merger takes place, there is one core team that is being set up that actually decides what works in the best interest of both the organizations and what we can do and what we can't do at a very higher level, I'm talking about. And this is where communication also plays a very significant role. And it also depends how, as an organization, you value your communication head and you value his or her thoughts. And it has to be one single effort towards merger. And everybody, as I said, has to be on the same page.
Right. And this merger team, so you said there's a separate merger team that is usually set up that's ideal, and then you have communications that is a key part of that team, correct?
Yeah, as I said, it's super important to form a core communication team before the merger. And this team should have members from the branding team, marketing, HR, legal, procurement, and all the other departments, who can be involved. And we need to make sure that everybody knows their roles and responsibilities and that this whole team works together towards the same goal, which is having successful merger communication. And for transparency, the name of these team members can be mentioned on the dedicated page that we have built so that it helps to the larger audience.
That's a great idea. And you said consistency and clarity. I think those were two things that stood out. Who decides usually, Preeti, what the roles and responsibilities are? So, as you said, all the key members are part of this merger team. But who is setting the direction on who's supposed to do what within this team?
Yeah, so Krusha, the godfather of the entire merger activity that is happening is that one core team, that integration team that I said has been set up at very high level, the CXO's level. And that is the team that is deciding what is in the best interest of the organization, the new organization that is being formed.
Right. Okay, very clear. So I think we've covered the fact that the strategy of it, the goal setting, the role division is very important. Now, you have already given us a little teaser into the tools actually used during this merger, right? And I think that is something of big interest to everyone. So, what were the tools used by you during the merger? Like, was it only emailers, or how did you all approach this tool wise?
Technology is my favorite topic when it comes to using these tools for communication. So, the world of technology, Krusha, is changing very fast, as we know. And therefore, it's very important to be agile with our communications. We need to have a unified and a multi channel approach. We can't just stick to one and forget about others. And in this new age, intranet and internal communication tools that we have these days, like Sociable, Teams, and all others, they are very helpful. And these tools not only keep the audience engaged with two-way communication, but also provide metrics to the managers, to figure out what is working well and what's not. And I mentioned earlier about having a dedicated SharePoint page for the merger project and keeping the internet hopping with details. So these are two. And third, I'll talk about, another way of keeping everyone in loop is by having a virtual home. Now, a virtual home is the best way to give some shape to your thoughts about the new organization and giving your people a sneak peek of what's coming up. You can just own this space and you can tell people about the history of these two companies and how the new business units are going to be, the brand guidelines, the values, behaviors. You can also plug in the social media chatter here. There are a lot of other creative ways that we can adopt to keep our people engaged. And here in this virtual home, you can organize your first town hall meeting for the new organization and just invite the employees to join in. It can be really fun and engaging to be connected through this virtual home.
Preeti, also interested to understand, of course, you've undertaken this task at a big company. Are there other nitty-gritties just that come to mind, for example, region or language or anything else? What else do you keep in mind to, is all communication to everyone, or is there any level of targeting? How does this work?
As a big multinational organization is, they have more responsibilities to communicate and they have different challenges as well while communicating. So it's very important to talk in the language that your employee understands. You cannot impose one language to them and just leave them to figure out what the message means. So if the employee has a native language of maybe Chinese or any other European language, you have to translate. You have to translate the core message, and you have to ensure that it has the same relevance, the same meaning, and the essence is not lost in the translation. So all these things need to be kept in mind when it comes to communication in general as well.
Correct. But thank you for sharing that because I think that's so important. And I love that you spoke about not just translation, but also not losing the essence of the message, right? So it's a mix of automation plus human side of making sure it's working. But at the end of the day, anything, especially something like a merger in communication, is a change management project, right? When you look at it as a change management project, and since you've been through it so recently, what are aspects of change management that you consider or execute during this process?
Yeah, absolutely, Krisha. Merger communication is a classic example of change management because when we talk about planning change, we often expect it to be rational and controlled and systematic. But in reality, it is super chaotic. We need to have an approach to change, and that's what planned change is all about. Change communication incorporates, letting employees know what's changing and how it will affect them and what they need to do next. The idea is to help people make a leap from where they are now to where they need to be. And that's exactly the purpose of merger communication as well. All the activities are designed and planned to achieve this goal.
Love that. So it's almost crucial for a communication manager to also be good at change management because a lot of communication, especially like a merger or crisis communication or anything of this kind, is in fact change management.
Absolutely.
So true. We even say that even at Sociable, when we are launching the communication platform for so many clients, it's also about making sure they're getting the change management strategy with it. So get that.
And the world is changing at a very fast pace. I don't know if you'll agree with me. Post COVID, these changes are like happening too often, and you're always on your toes if you have to survive in this ever changing environment.
Definitely agree with you there. I want to pretty come to the fact that obviously we do this podcast as a learning, right? We want to share, we want to learn together. And while clearly you've done a great job with the merger and it's been a success, what are some of the key challenges that you did face during this project? What were things that you did find tough?
The toughest part of communicating is getting people's attention and keeping them engaged by talking about things that matter to them. We have seen that communication can break down, updates can be missed, and employees struggle to stay productive when they are not up to date with what's happening around them. So during this project, we had to make sure that people checked out the SharePoint page, they read the CEO's message, they went to the virtual home, they attended town halls so that they are aware about what's going on. Without it, you're just clueless and you struggle with your own productivity.
So the engagement, catching attention, as you said, there's a reason I guess we say that attention is the currency of today. So that seems to have been the biggest challenge.
Not only with merger communication, Krusha, but overall, when it comes to communication, getting people's attention is always a task that communicators struggle with. And we need to adopt various strategies in order to be successful with that. And that was the biggest challenge in this project as well.
Great. So, Preeti, I think thank you for sharing the challenge. Now, when you come towards the end of looking back at something like this, a project like this, today, measurement is the big topic. How does one measure the success of employee communications during this merger? What was it for you?
Yeah, well, Krisha, so I think the best way to know if your employee communication is successful is to find out if it is creating a lot of buzz. Are people talking about it around the water cooler? Or, interacting with your posts on intranet, Teams, Sociable, or SharePoint? If yes, then you're doing a great job. You can measure and validate the success with metrics later, but creating that buzz is what makes communication lively and interactive. I remember for me, I'm just sharing this incident when I realized, that my effort were a success is that when I met our CEO in Hyderabad during her visit to India from the Netherlands after the merger, she took out time, especially to appreciate the work done by the whole communication team. And she congratulated me on behalf of my team. And that was a really proud moment for me.
Oh, wow, of course. I think that's such a proud moment in a career also overall. I'm sure it'll be one of those moments in your 20 years, and I'm sure you've had many more. I'm going to ask you a bonus question. In terms of now that you've been through an entire merger, communication during a merger, right? If you were given the opportunity to do this again, say next year somewhere, is there anything else in terms of tools or strategy that you think would be great to have? Maybe that didn't even exist last year because things are moving so fast, but any one bonus thing that comes to mind? I'm sure there are many, but just one.
Yeah, whenever you have an event, you organize an event, and at the end of it, there could be some hits and misses, and there are always 100 ways you could redo it, the whole thing. But out of this project, I'm very happy how all the teams worked in tandem, how I had a great time working with my colleagues, and how we had each other's back and how we supported each other and made this project an overall success. But yeah, so you talked about one thing that I could have at the end of this merger. I think that if there could be a mobile application, especially for this, because when a person is working on a laptop, they have their own projects and assignments and deadlines that are playing in their mind. But whenever they go back and during weekends, if they have this mobile application in their phones, they can at convenience check the details whenever they want to. So I think this could be one addition that I could do to the whole merger project, but otherwise it was a very well synchronized event.
Love that. I think definitely, yes, more and more having your comms on the mobile is becoming not just a desire, but a necessity. So, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great one and very useful to anyone starting to undertake a merger. And with that in mind, Preeti, you are an expert in the field of communication, and now I would say even in communication during a merger. So, specifically there, if you had to share and sum up three key recommendations to listeners who maybe are or soon will be in the position to manage employee communication during a merger, what would they be?
Sure. So here are my three recommendations. One, when trying to grab people's attention, you need to first answer the question on their behalf. What's in it for me? And explain why they should listen to you, why your message is so important for them. Second, I think it's super important for businesses to run campaigns that add value for their people, along with having the other important corporate campaigns that we run all through the year. We should have one valuable campaign for them that gives them insights, for example, into the industry or the latest updates and trends that they can use in their day to day work. But trust me, employees really appreciate such campaigns and they look forward to them. And the third one, you need to organize communication without stuffing people's inboxes with messages. We need to limit the channels to two or three, like intranet. I talked about the mobile and web app and the instant messaging apps like the MS Teams. That way, everybody stays in the loop without feeling overwhelmed by emails having all the time.
I think those are some great recommendations, Preeti. I'm sure there was so much, and thank you for being able to sum it up in a very succinct manner. I could go on and ask you a lot more on the merger and on employee comms, but I think I'm going to stop for now. But before I let you go, I do want to ask you a final question that I enjoy asking all our guests. It's nothing to do with employee comms, but would love to know, is there a title of a book or a movie that had a significant impact on you recently? And do tell us why.
Yeah, Krisha, I really enjoy reading books. And I'm a member of the British Council Library in Delhi, and I have my own sweet little library at home. So currently, I'm reading Winning Minds Secrets from the Language of Leadership by Simon Lancaster. Now, this book talks about a secret language of leadership, which includes some cues and signals that determine who reaches the top in the world of politics and business. So, this book explores the communication techniques used by successful leaders like Barack Obama, Richard Branson. And you would be amazed to know that the ancient Greeks were the first to study the art of communication 2,500 years ago. And now, in the new age, with the recent breakthroughs in neuroscience, we can now understand what works in communication and how it affects our mind. So, this is a very, really interesting book that I have.
That sounds so interesting. I love reading and hearing about neuroscience, so I'm going to take the recommendation. Thank you for sharing with us, Preeti, and thank you so much for being here and being very gracious with your time and your knowledge today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This was Master of Comms, the podcast with transformative communication techniques straight from the pros. Find us right here for the next episode. See you soon.